Does the principal have the right to search a student's locker?
No, that's private property. I don't think they have any right to search lockers unless it's really something major, like they have a gun in there or something, and they have probable cause to believe that there's something really damaging in there.
Yes, I think they should go in there because it's not a place on school campus to have drugs and guns and alcohol and stuff like that. You should keep that at home in your private life.
They really have no right to go in there. It's your personal locker. You have to pay for your own lock to lock it up. They don't give you locks anymore. So if you're going to pay $3 to buy a lock to lock it up, they have no right to break it open and go in there.
Hello, I'm Arthur Miller, and welcome to Miller's Court. Does a student have the same legal right as an adult? Well, the Supreme Court has often said that students don't leave their rights at the schoolhouse gate. But how do we balance those rights against the school's need to maintain discipline? And who do we trust to make decisions like that? Our topic is students' rights. And to help us with the discussion, we have William Lawrence, headmaster of Boston's English High School. Bill last year suspended 1,000 students. Our second expert is Richard Emery. He's the staff counsel with the New York Civil Liberties Union. Dick has defended many students on constitutional matters, and after this program may have another 1,000 clients from Bill's school. We've also got a wonderful audience of students, parents, teachers, and school administrators. Now, Dick, do you believe that high schoolers should have the same legal rights as adults?
Virtually, yes. High school students are citizens in their community and in the community of their school, just as we are all citizens in our generalized communities.
All right, Mr. Tough Guy, what do you have to say to Dick?
I think that when students come through the door that perhaps they forfeit some of the rights that they may have had on the other side of the door, and that administrators have a responsibility to preserve some sort of order.
Now it's time for you to get involved in this discussion. Let me tell you a little story. A school principal gets an anonymous tip that John, an 11th grader, is dealing in marijuana and keeps a stash of it in his locker. The principal immediately takes a master key and, without John's knowledge or consent, searches the locker. Is that search justified, or have John's rights been violated? You think about that. We'll take a short break. John, an 11th grader, has just had his locker searched by a headmaster like Bill looking for marijuana. Is that legal? What do you think, Brenda?
Well, in my opinion, the headmaster violated the student's constitutional right, guaranteed him under the Fourth Amendment against...
Got a schoolhouse lawyer here.
...against unreasonable search and seizure. Now, this right can be waived if he could get a search warrant under probable cause. In my opinion, idle gossip is not probable cause.
So you think that that was John's locker?
Definitely.
What do you think, Ted?
Well, I think if John was a 40-year-old adult, that the headmaster would have had to gone to a judge, get a search warrant, and then search John's locker.
But it's my school. It's my locker.
I
allow you to have.
But you still have to go to a judge and get.
I'll deny you the right to have lockers.
Yeah, but you ought to at least give him notice that his locker is subject to search. You can't just go in the locker without telling him at the beginning of the year that his locker can be subject to inspection at any time.
You can't just make it on idle rumor. You have to go to somebody, get, a permit of some sort to search his locker.
But I'm the somebody. I'm the judge in this case.
You can't be the judge and the executor of the punishment.
Let me get something straight here. You actually think you've got the same rights as I have?
Yes, I do.
I'm a 40-year-old adult.
So I'm a citizen also of the United States.
You think you're a citizen of the United States?
Right.
I see. But it's the schoolhouse. That man over there has a big institution to run, and he doesn't want you running around the school selling your little funny cigarettes.
Yeah, but my parents are paying for me to go to that school, and they're taxpayers, and they're citizens as well as I am.
Hugo, do you think that's your locker?
Well, it's my locker because they told me. Well, they tell you at the beginning of the year when they give you the locker that it's yours and you can do whatever you want with it. They don't tell you can hide marijuana or anything like that in it.
Are you offended that Bill is going to go look in your locker when he gets a tip?
Well, I don't think he should go by, like she said, by idle rumor.
What then?
I mean, it's, well, what if I heard two teachers saying, well, the headmaster has a bottle in his drawer.
Let's go to his office and open it up.
Can I go to his locker and say, well, let's see if he has a bottle in his drawer, and then we'll call the police and, get him arrested.
Bernie.
I think the locker belongs to the school. Agree with Bill.
It's probably the case, Arthur, that a employer can consent to the search of a secretary's desk or an employee's desk. So that puts a different light on it to some degree. And one has to, even if you don't distinguish between adults and students, it may well be that if an employer can do that, give permission to the police to search, maybe in a school there would be some right that wouldn't mean that a student has less rights than an adult, even if the locker can be searched.
Bernie, do you think that Bill can search that locker anytime he wants?
I think he can. I think it would be prudent, however, for him to have sufficient reason to go into the locker, and he shouldn't just indiscriminately go into lockers for the sake of going into lockers.
I think there's an expectation that the youngsters should be aware of, and that expectation comes from the students and comes from their parents. And that is that Bill will maintain a proper educational climate for the students. And if he has that authority, then I think it's incumbent on him to make sure that marijuana does not get into the school, and what he's doing is being protective and corrective rather than punitive.
In other words, he's a big brother. He deprives everyone in his school of what Brenda called the Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable searches and seizures.
And going beyond that, I mean, while I might tell people that one day I'm going to search lockers, I also feel I probably have the right to, while all of you are at home, go through each and every one of your lockers and search them.
At night?
At night.
While the kids are home studying, you're there rummaging through the lockers, huh? God, you're sick, Bill. You're sick, huh?
As a parent, I mandate that he goes through that locker.
As a parent?
I'm telling him to go through that locker.
No.
You like that, Patricia?
No, I don't agree with that at all.
I'm telling him to go through that locker to protect my children.
But you have to understand, he is not a parent. He is not a parent. No, but Bill is not a parent, and you're asking him to act like a parent. You may go through your children's room and your children's drawer, but I say there should be some restrictions, although courts have disagreed with me. There should be some restrictions on the way a school principal goes rummaging through people's items.
Well, Dan, why do you want him going through the kids' lockers at school?
Because I may have a child in that school who may ultimately be a user of that marijuana that, had the locker been searched, would not have been a user.
Patricia is laughing. Why are you laughing, Patricia?
My daughter.
Because he's making it sound like I'm a druggie.
Stop him from using marijuana if you find it once, because he's going to hide it someplace else.
Well, I think the restriction that Dick is talking about that is due every youngster is some kind of notice. I think the students ought to be told and ought to be on notice that he has the right to go into that the locker is jointly owned and he reserves the right.
Don't use the word jointly.
Well, Bill should have the right to enter the locker at will.
Now, Bernie,
But
let's face facts. You put a big notice that says lockers subject to search, and that means everybody will just keep the stuff elsewhere.
I think it's a deterrent to they're bringing things into the school that shouldn't be there, yes.
And the first day of school, I'll tell kids that their lockers are always subject to search anytime I want to search them.
Let me ask Bill, what standard do you use, Bill? Patricia asked before. Who's to say you exercise your discretion wisely?
Well, one, I think I have the mandate of parents to try and protect their students from drugs or whatever other contraband might be in there. And also, you know, you're going to take into consideration the student's history, what other things he may have been involved in. I mean, you know, but I have learned long enough in the business that any student, anytime, anywhere could have anything in his
the locker.
So I am probably going to search it because I would rather be safe than sorry.
The difference here is, though, that it's very interesting that they can search the lockers and they assert the right to search lockers, but even Bill will tell you that they can't go searching people's personal items without some much higher degree.
Let's test that. Let's test that. Chris, you're walking down the hallway, and suddenly Bill leaps out and starts patting you down. What do you say?
He can't do that.
Get out of here.
Huh?
Say get away from me.
Get away from me? Nancy?
How can you possibly do that, though? Because that, in a sense, is that you're taking rights that at home your parents might search your room, which is crummy anyway. That for parents to say that they're going to search in school, that's not fair. You should at least inform the student. That's not only a lack of trust, it's an
Well, it's
invasion
even
of
more
privacy.
than informing the student. You can't search a student's person, their belongings, their coat, and their body without a level of suspicion which is comparable. It's a little less than, regrettably, but it's comparable to that which all citizens enjoy in the society.
Is that what the courts say?
It's comparable, yes. You don't need a warrant. So there is that protection which is not there for students. And it's called reasonable suspicion instead of probable cause. But the fact is that an articulable suspicion, that is a reasonable suspicion, is required.
Like what?
Well, for instance, you can take into account the student's background, whether they've been found with stolen items or illegal items in other instances. There may have to be a report of something missing if you're looking for a stolen item. You can't just get a tip that he has a stolen item on him if you haven't had a report that something has been stolen.
Or if Chris's eyes are a little glazed?
Never. That's not
enough?
I disagree.
He does it all the time.
I think that if Chris's eyes are glazed and I have what might be the faint aroma of burning leaves, that I would almost certainly.
It's fall, Bill. It's fall.
Everybody in school feels like if someone searched your desk.
I would probably not like it very much if someone searched my desk. But I'm an adult, and that's when I think the difference is. I think that's what the difference is.
It's the big A for adult, huh?
For adult. An adult is someone who is not in school at my high school, for one, because I don't have adults in my school.
When you enter school, right, do you give a little speech saying, now you're an adult, you're supposed to act like an adult, you're not in kindergarten anymore?
Of course, you know, when Bill suspends a student and they walk out the door, they have the same right as any other adult. They're considered an adult there. How come when they walk in the school door, all those rights are stripped from them?
I don't think they are.
Bill does.
Although the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures does theoretically apply to students, the truth is that school officials like Bill, because of their obligation to provide a sound educational environment and the notion that they act as substitute parents, have the freedom to search, even when the police cannot. In the language used by the courts and given to us by Dick, school officials need only have a reasonable suspicion to search. Now, let's suppose when Bill went into John's locker, he did find marijuana. What should we do to John? What kind of discipline? Think about that. We'll take a short break. Well, it turned out that John had some marijuana in that locker. Now the question is, what kind of discipline? Harriet?
Well, if an illegal substance was found in his locker, he's got to be punished, either by suspension. I would say suspension.
Suspension? For how long?
2 weeks, 3 weeks? 2 weeks,
2
or
weeks?
3 weeks, yes.
2 weeks?
I think that's a very...
Hold it. Richie?
He should be expelled, but because suspension for 2 weeks ain't enough. He shouldn't have had marijuana in the locker in the first place.
Expel him from school?
No, yeah.
How's he ever going to get an education?
I feel that it should be consulted between the parent and the student and the principal. And then dealt with as a matter like that, because the parents are going to know about it whether or not, if you expel them or suspend them or take them to court, they're going to find out, so they should know ahead of time.
Arthur, you know, the point really here is that education in this society is not only a right, it's an obligation. It's necessary to be a citizen in our society. You can't just grab someone out of school for something unless it's really serious and really
Marijuana
important.
in the locker isn't
It's serious, but it's not the end of the world, and that's the point. And you got to give him a right to dispute it. Maybe it was somebody else's marijuana. Maybe somebody else had a combination. Therefore, he has to have a hearing.
The voice of the civil libertarian. Let's hear the voice of the school administrator. Peter, what would you do?
The Boston Code of Discipline calls for immediate suspension, and that's what Bill would have to do, whether he wanted to or not. Secondly, where it's such a serious matter, the parents would have to be brought into it. It's not a matter that they could be shut out from. Thirdly, because the possession of marijuana in this city, in this state, is a criminal offense, the police would, in all probability, that is correct.
Bill, would you call in the police?
It's not a simple school infraction.
Depending on the issue. Depending on the issue. I mean, when you talk about punishment, I think we can go all the way from the one-day suspension or perhaps even a conference to talk about it to what Richie's talking about, which is putting the student out of school. If I had somebody who was a regular dealer of marijuana and other drugs in the building who had been involved in a number of cases like this, I might recommend an expulsion from school for the remainder of the school year. I think we've got to question.
What purpose is served
Well,
by
because I think we've got to question Richard's whole premise, which I've read just tomes of literature on from the courts about how important school is. I'm the first to admit that school is important, but I also think that school is important only if it is run in an orderly manner where students have the opportunity to learn. If we allow everybody to come to school no matter what they do, then we're removing the school from what would happen outside of school. I always hear people say, well, if this had happened outside of school, this would have happened. Well, if this had happened outside of school, a policeman wouldn't have said, maybe we're going to arrest you or maybe we're not going to arrest you. He would have arrested you.
Maureen, you're shaking your head.
Well, I think that the child is deterring the education of other children, then that is the problem.
But Maureen, John is your son. Do you want him expelled?
I've had 6 children, and I know. Yes, I would.
You would?
I would want him suspended.
Arthur?
Possibly.
I've had the same 6, and I would suspend with an in-house suspension because that way the educational process can continue, and at the same time you're giving due deference to this illegal act. First time.
Arthur, I don't want to suggest that something serious shouldn't be done. The point is it has to be done by an orderly process, and the Supreme Court has said as much. What you have to do is bring the student in, confront him with the allegations, give him or her a chance to respond to those allegations, and then bring with the parent, figure out altogether what the best thing to do in that situation.
And then do what you would have done in the beginning.
Not at all necessarily, because even teachers can see the light sometimes.
Even teachers?
Right.
Kim?
Don't you think the student has some say in what his punishment is in this?
I think basically I agree with Richard that, yes, you're going to give the student the opportunity to say what he has to say. What he's going to say most of the time is, no, it's not my marijuana, and no, I don't want you to punish me. And then you move on to the next step. How many times is someone going to walk in and say, yes, it's my marijuana, yes, I think you should suspend me, I'm very sorry that I did it. That happens.
What if somebody said to you, yes, it was mine, but I'm not dealing it, that's for myself? Would you just still say, yeah, all right,
the possession in the building is still a suspendable offense and still something that would probably, in all likelihood, in my building, lead to a suspension.
Kim, it's a gun. It's a gun in the locker.
You're going to suspend us
Kim,
anyway.
it's a gun in the locker. gun in
Well, that's another
John's
story.
locker.
A gun can kill someone. Marijuana can just, deteriorate their brain or whatever. That's their own problem. You know?
And that's what we want in the schools. A lot of people with deteriorating brains, huh?
They take away the right of someone and say that we're going to enter the locker, meaning saying that it's not yours, it's our locker. Then how can you prove that it's their gun or their marijuana?
Because I assigned them that
Your
locker.
locker to teach and to help, okay? Say someone did find marijuana in the locker, okay? You should confront that student, talk to them. What if they did have a serious drug problem? What are you going to say? All right, kick them off into the streets? You're there to help. You're there to help people.
I'm talking about putting them out for a reasonable period of time where we might find out all the
Without even
stuff.
consulting
Now,
them.
Nancy, Dick says you're going to give the student a hearing. A hearing, like due process.
Do they have rights?
Yeah. You can hire Dick.
Yeah, we have rights.
But the nature of the hearing must depend on the seriousness of the offense and the seriousness of the consequences. If the offense is minor and it may result in a short-term suspension, it can be a very informal hearing. But if it's a gun and it's going to result in an expulsion, then the student really has a right, because he's going to be deprived of this very important thing, education, to contest it in every way he can.
Now, think about this one. The school has just promulgated a new code. The new code says all students shall be clean-shaven, have short hair, no dungarees, no shorts, no halters, and no pregnancy. What do you think about that? We'll take a short break. Now, what about that school code regulating dress and pregnancy? What do you think, Brenda?
I think you went to school to learn, not to be told what you're supposed to wear.
Deepa?
What if the parents can't afford decent clothes?
So you don't like that code?
No.
John, what's your reaction?
I think prohibition of pregnancy in school is legitimate.
Why?
Because I don't think that a person in their high school years is equipped to both bring up a child and go to school.
Just because the girl's pregnant, that doesn't mean she's going to be slower in learning.
Students don't leave their rights behind when they go to school. But the truth is that these rights turn out to be just a little bit weaker than those of adults. Now, as you've heard in this discussion, administrators have to walk an awfully thin line between the duty to respect individual rights and the obligation to provide a safe learning environment. Thanks for joining us on Miller's Court.